Hi everyone, it's Don from the MS Guide. Today, I'm talking to a really, really interesting guest. They share a concern, call it a passion that's dear to my heart as well. As many of you will have seen, I want to transfer to alemtuzumab because of the vaccine issues with ocrelizumab. And Tanya's in pretty much the same boat as me in terms of thinking. So we're going to talk to Tanya today, and we're going to start that right now. Hi, Tanya. How
Hi.
you doing?
Fine. Yeah, fine. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks. Tanya, can you just
It,
tell us a little bit about yourself, what you want to do, your MS and that kind of stuff, and just keep it to what you're comfortable with?
yeah, sure. No, well, I was diagnosed with MS about nearly 3 years ago. Somehow it didn't come as too much of a shock to me because I had a half sister with MS, and even though she wasn't really part of my family, I didn't grow up with her. It was something I was always aware of from an early age. She was a lot older than me. She died about 9 years ago. Unfortunately, she didn't get the chance to get all these fantastic treatments that are now available.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm on ocrelizumab. Obviously concerned at the moment in the current climate, and also my consultant mentioned at my last appointment last year that he didn't think I should be on it too long term because he just sort of muttered something about effect on the immune system, but then moved on to talking about something else. So I didn't really get a chance. I was taken aback a bit. That since then I've been doing lots of reading. So I'm he sort of said to me he thought I should be on it for another couple of years. That was this time last year. He said that, and so I've been thinking, well, what was he thinking of? He was talking about de-escalating. I'm thinking, is that what I want to do? Why should it be a de-escalation? Why not alemtuzumab or cladribine?
Yeah.
And I know you talked about cladribine back in May, and I suppose I'd
We're
be
actually on the
interested to
same
know.
page.
Yeah, I suppose I'd be interested to know why you now decided to choose alemtuzumab over cladribine.
Okay. Feel like you're interviewing me, but that's absolutely fine. No, the reason,
Yeah, sorry. I'm done.
no, but I didn't know where to go. So it was
Yeah.
reading this stuff and finding out, and then thinking, hang on a second, I don't want to have to choose between having an effective COVID vaccine and being able to be part of the community more widely as we used to be,
Yeah.
or treating my MS. I didn't want to make that choice. And I was looking into things, and alemtuzumab, as we both know, was restricted by the European Medicines Agency. So, but then when you look into it and you speak to many doctors, it's one of these things, it sounds like it was restricted more by bureaucrats
Mm.
who didn't
Yeah.
have the full understanding versus the doctors who had seen this working. Um, then it's looking at other things because you're quite right. I'm not a doctor, but as
Mm.
I'm well aware of the sort of mutterings, shall we say, about long-term immunosuppression with the anti-CD20 drugs. So there's ocrelizumab, which is Ocrevus, natalizumab, which is Tysabri, even ofatumumab, the new Kesimpta, the pen, um, all of them, rituximab, what have you. It's I can't think
Yeah.
of any more mabs, but it's I think that's probably what they were referring to when they were muttering about long-term use.
Mm.
It's And then I was speaking to somebody that I know, and they said, "What about alemtuzumab?" And I
Mm.
said, "I didn't think you could get that." And they looked at me, full confession here, they're a neurologist that I know, and they said,
Mm.
"Yes, you can. You need to ask for it, and also it would be my fifth DMT." So I ended up making this argument that failure, as defined by the Association of British Neurologists, because we're both
Yeah.
in the UK, drug failure was something that could be measured by MRI. But that was in 2015 was the last time they did that, to the best of my knowledge. For
Mm.
me, ocrelizumab may be great at treating MS, and I'm not knocking it like that. But to me, it's a failure because it is making me have to choose. And
Mm.
chatting to you is a similar thing. You're in a different position to me. You've got three children. You know, it's you live in a different part of the country, etc. But I don't want to be forced to choose, and that's why. And then
Mm.
alemtuzumab and cladribine are what they call IRTs,
Mm.
immunoreconstitutive therapies. Now, the chances of it
Yeah.
reconstituting anything in me at 28 years of MS are pretty slim, but I would take a slim chance, or even no chance, even if it just stopped things dead in its tracks. Plus, no more drugs. You take it once
Yeah.
now, you take it
Yeah.
once in a year, and then you turn your back on it, whether it's cladribine or alemtuzumab. And
that's what always appealed to me about it in the first place. I like the idea that, it's just done and dusted, and then you can forget about it. And that's why I wanted it to begin with.
MS is part of my life. I don't want it to be all of my life. I don't want it to be every 6 months or every day or whatever.
Yeah.
Can I ask, is your MS considered quite active, or is it, regarding your MRIs and stuff?
Yeah. Well, before I was on ocrelizumab, it was rapidly evolving severe, they classed it as.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I had 3 relapses within a year. So yeah. So that's what it's down on paper as. But obviously, since I've been on the drug, I've not had anything. So I don't know now whether when it comes to NICE guidelines and changing drugs, whether they look at actually your current status, or what what your status was before you started treatment.
NICE guidelines. Then you've got the Association of British Neurologists. So there's people like Professor Giovanoni, Alistair Coles. I don't know if he's a doctor or professor. So who's heavily involved in alemtuzumab in Cambridge, and a bunch of other people. But it's my argument that what constitutes failure is an outdated definition.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It's. I mean, when I was diagnosed with MS, as one of my friends said, he looked in a medical textbook from the early 90s, and it said MS treatment options: steroids and a positive attitude. Well, we've come a long way from that.
Yeah.
So it's. I'm imagining when you have had those 3, frankly, any relapse to me is scary. The scary thing for me is, will this end? Will I remain disabled? Is moving drugs. I mean, even now there's a degree of everything's pretty benign, but I just keep thinking of the smoldering MS. There's things going on. I always say to a friend, my brain's rotting, whether you can see it or not. And they say, oh, there's no activity on MRI. And I'm saying, no, you need to rephrase that. With the current technology, we cannot see anything.
No, exactly. And that's what worries me more than physical disability. My mum at the moment, I've just moved her to where I live now, and she's 83. She doesn't have MS, but she's aging. She's got frontal lobe shrinkage, and I see what it's like for somebody as they age, naturally. A supposed healthy person aging, and it's horrible to watch. And she's struggling with everything. She can't even make a simple decision about what to eat for dinner. And I kind of think, well, that's what I don't want. I can cope with being in a wheelchair, but I want to be able to think still, for as long as possible.
Exactly. For me as well, seeing, am I petrified? I've had issues in my eyes, and you think,
yeah, me too.
God, I could put up with a lot of crap, but I couldn't put up with, simple things. If I couldn't read a book.
My first, the same for me. My first episode with MS, without knowing it was MS, I had 3 weeks of double vision, and it was horrible. Every morning I'd wake up and I thought, oh, I wonder if it's okay now. And I'd open my eyes, and again, it's still double, and I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even watch TV. It was horrible.
What sort of responses have you got when you've said alemtuzumab, for example, to the nurses? How did they react?
I haven't spoken to the nurses about it. First mentioned, well, when I first chose ocrelizumab, as a sort of second choice, it was very much a second choice, because I didn't want to leave it too long thinking I don't know when alemtuzumab's going to be back, available again and all that. It might have another relapse. It might be really disabling. So I chose ocrelizumab. And I remember at the time when I was making my choice, I asked, I said to them, if I start on this, and can I then later go on to say alemtuzumab if it's available? And they said, oh, no, you can't treat. They just said stuff like, oh, you can't switch back that easily. No, because each one that you have has a different effect on your immune system. They just said all sorts of vague stuff that obviously I didn't know anything then either, so I couldn't argue with them.
Yeah.
I also felt that at the time when I was choosing my DMT, I felt like, I had all these meetings with the MS nurses, not the doctor, the nurses, and they were lovely, and they went through and they, gave me 2 hour long appointments to discuss everything, called like education meetings or something. But I felt like I I was comparing drugs like apples and pears, really. Nobody explained to me the difference between how different drugs actually work and what the implications are of choosing ocrelizumab rather than cladribine, for example, which works in a totally different way. And
Why do you think that?
all they gave me was percentage efficacy rates, but then you're not comparing the same things. How can you compare something that says 50% that uses a whole completely different data set to something else, that
So
says
why,
70%,
Tanya, why do you think this is? Why do you think this was how they presented you with the information in this way?
they gave it to me that way because that's the way the MS Trust puts it down, and that's the data they get. They gave me all the literature from the MS Trust. Based on that
So-
meeting, I then contacted my own MS nurse who'd been previously on holiday at the time and said, actually, there's some more questions I've got. So I went back and she invited me in for another meeting, and she agreed that, whatever I asked, I can't even remember now. But you're given all this information, but you're not actually like you haven't got the tools to think, go through it and ask the right critical questions at the time.
This is my bugbear. I think if you went in with a
Mm.
melanoma, number one, they wouldn't say go away for 6 months and see how it shapes out.
No,
They'd be
exactly.
on it. And I think a lot of doctors and nurses confuse the difference between shared decision making or joint decision making, because
Mm,
ultimately you or I have the right to say no to anything.
mm,
But
yeah.
I speak to so many MS patients, they feel like it's been lumped in their lap. Here's the information,
Mm,
you decide. And it's like, you've got a medical degree. Why can't you help me, or
mm,
at least
yeah,
advise me
exactly.
or steer
Mm,
me? Or,
yeah.
you don't go to see your GP and say, they don't say, well, you've got a chest infection and, there's 5 different kinds of antibiotics that I could use. It's
No.
here's some amoxicillin 500, take it 3 times a day. Tell me if there's an issue,
Yeah. I
moving.
mean, I was lucky in the sense that after I was diagnosed, I was basically told the world's your oyster. You can choose any drug you want. You can even have stem cell therapy. He said I could be
Really?
referred for that.
Wow.
So he was very open to anything. It just that scared me, and B, it didn't fit in with, looking after kids. I'd have to go to London and
You've got
isolate from my
3
kids for a
kids.
month. Yeah, that wasn't really possible. So it wasn't an option for me.
I have a friend who
So
had
it,
stem cells, and it was pretty much a year out of the game.
mm,
And great if you're a single man who's 50, but
yeah.
not so great if you've got 3 kids.
No, exactly. So, but the thing is, it was offered to me, which I know it isn't to everyone. He said, but that was just the meeting I had with him shortly before I made my choice. But then I didn't have access to my neurologist when I had questions. It was just the nurses. I suppose I could have phoned his secretary and asked questions, and he probably would have phoned me back. But I didn't really know that was an option at the time,
Yeah. Well,
because the
Tanya, back
nurses
to
were
your
there.
point.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Mm,
You're completely overwhelmed. I think anything. Can I ask
yeah.
what your sort of education background is? Is it medical or chemistry or English, or I don't know. It's
No, I'm a languages graduate, so
right. So
yeah.
it's not really. It doesn't really fall in your remit,
No.
does it? To sort.
No, not really. I mean, I'm lucky that my husband's a doctor, so I can ask him
Yeah.
questions. So he's a GP, so he rarely sees MS patients, and the odd few he does, it's his job to refer them to the neurologist, and that's it. I mean, they're jack of all trades. They have to know a little bit about everything, but
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
no detail. Yeah.
But I always
So
say they need
that's
to also know enough to go, this isn't my field. I'm referring you to the hospital.
exactly. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
it's like a friend who
Um,
diagnosed with MS because his GP seized on something he said, which he didn't even spot because he was describing what he thought was a result of martial arts fighting that he did.
mm,
But she had spotted that he had neurological symptoms in 2 separate parts of his body.
mm,
And he said it was really weird. She suddenly just focused in on this. And it was like, would you
mm,
have a scan, please? Bam, MS. But that was her skill,
yeah,
was to spot the odd
yeah,
thing
yeah.
and go, right. So
Yeah.
where are
No,
you?
I mean, when I was diagnosed, it was similar. I got referred to the right place, and I was diagnosed within a couple of weeks. So it was all
Yeah,
very quick.
yeah.
Yeah.
Likewise, my GP was really on it back in '93 or '4.
Yeah.
So where are you now, Tanya? Regarding all
What
this?
on my?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a letter to my neurologist a couple of weeks ago via his secretary, or an email rather, via his secretary, not expecting an answer there and then, but saying, because I've got an appointment with him in 2 weeks, and I wrote down everything that I want to discuss with him at my half-hour appointment. Because unlike the previous two, well, the first time, obviously, I didn't have a clue about anything. My husband came with me as well because I wanted somebody there, not because he's a medic, but just because I thought I'll forget half of what's being said and I need another set of eyes and ears.
I've done the same with my brother. I've just said, come along.
Yeah. So the last time I went on my own, but I still felt that, it was like when he mentioned this thing about stopping Ocrevus after a couple of years, which, wasn't something I expected him to say. And then I thought, right, this time I'm going to guide where the conversation goes. I'm not going to let him surprise me with anything. I'm going to go in saying what I want to talk about. This is my half hour, not his, and so I just wrote down all this stuff, saying that, he mentioned this at my last appointment a year ago. I've done lots of reading since. I'd like to know what sort of drug he was thinking of de-escalating to, and then I also copied him in on that. There was one of the emails from Professor Giovannoni where he wrote about. In fact, it was the one that I sent to you when I sort of started off this conversation about the about moving to either de-escalating after a couple of years on Ocrevus, or going up to alemtuzumab or cladribine. And so I copied him in on this, or sent him the link, and I said, do you agree with all this? So this is what I want to discuss with him. It was him that brought it up in the first place, but I have now done my research, and I want to know what he's thinking, what he thinks about the idea of moving up to alemtuzumab rather than de-escalating. And also, I even mentioned HSCT again, even though I discounted it last time, but just to get more information about it, because I didn't feel I got any last time. Yeah. Partly because I just dismissed it, but as my husband pointed out, and as you've pointed out, whenever you hear about all the bad statistics, it's based on a whole broad spectrum of people, and not the ones that are pretty healthy and haven't got any other comorbidities and all that. So
it really frustrates me, Tanya, because
yeah,
discussing risk, everybody sees it as this absolute thing, not this relative thing, because it's written on a data sheet, and they focus it, because who doesn't? I mean, this is about when you read the restaurant reviews on Google, you go, what do the 1-star ones say? And you know, there's 1,000 5-stars. You go, there's 2 1-stars who got really poor service. Maybe I don't go there. And just like that with drug data sheets. And I always sort of half joke and say, if you read the ibuprofen data sheet that you buy at the petrol station, you think it was going to kill you. And I mean, you can kill yourself with water. Hypernatremia. Yes, you can just drink too much water. So, and also, if something goes wrong, also how strong are your underlying systems? Because some of the alemtuzumab deaths, they think it was a contributory factor. It didn't kill them. It was a contributory factor. They were already in a pretty bad place, these people, long before alemtuzumab has walked into the whole equation. So I find it really troublesome that there's this absolutist view of, if it's written down. I mean, clinical trials, your husband will love, you must record death on clinical trial of any reason. So if the trial center is beside a bus station and 2 people over the course of the trial are run down by buses and die, attraction to large red moving objects will go on the data sheet as a potential risk. And I think valid because they're following the rules, but not valid in the sense that there's no context for anybody to understand how these deaths occurred.
Yeah.
And maybe these people just clumsy at crossing the road, not the drug. They were
Yeah.
just poor road crossers, or the
I know.
buses were driven really quick. Who knows? But
Mm,
yeah, so
yeah.
it's really, we are in broadly the same place, I think, because now
Yeah.
we're trying to action it. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is you're very engaged. I think many people with MS become more engaged and they learn more. And like you said at the beginning, it's just like, wow. The
Yeah.
Americans have a phrase, feeding from the fire hose, trying to have a
Mm,
drink from the fire hose. And I think that perfectly sums it up. Will you come
mm,
back and let us know where you're
I
going,
will.
how it pans out?
Yeah, definitely. Of course. Yeah.
And likewise, so will I, because and I've also got a friend who's just been approved for stem cells in London, and
Mm,
they have a young family, but it's just their MS is just bang there and not going to mess around anymore.
mm,
So
yeah.
that'll be interesting as well to learn about that. So Tanya,
Mm,
thank you very much for coming on the MS Guide. I really
pleasure.
appreciate your time. I know that you're super busy with 3 kids, so we will we'll catch up soon.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.